All right, welcome to something we're making. So we're going to be going into Blender and we're going to be making a trackside asset from start to finish. So we're going to be making a Queensland Rail heritage sign. I have photos of this on my USB, which I might bring up actually. It's in my photos folder. Here we are. So we're going to be making this for trains. And it's going to look amazing. So, what we're going to start off with is we're going to add a cylinder. Now this is automatically too big, so we're going to size it down to at least 0.030. Oh, that's a comma, that's why it didn't want to work. That is perfect. So what we're then working on now is we are going to be moving it around and making sure it sits perfectly on this green line. It doesn't have to be extremely perfect, it just has to be decent. Like, we don't want it to be floating. So that's our center. We want to make it about that big. Control C, Control V. We're going to cheat. We're doing it like this. Oops. 0.6. Just like that. So we've got this sort of goalpost happening. We want to get a plane, rotate it by 80 degrees. Whoa, that's not what we want. We're going to rotate it by 90 degrees. My bad. And this is going to be extremely important, but we need it on the y-axis. So this goes back to 0. That goes to 0.6. That goes back to 0. And we want this on 0.6, but we want it to be the negatives. So we don't have official lengths, so we're just going to estimate. I think that looks about right, because it is a pretty hefty sign. I think our poles need to be just a little bit longer. Just like that. So we can delete that. CV, we're cheating. Just like that. And we're going to size it just a tad, so it doesn't look way too big, but it's big enough to work on. We want to move this forward, just like that. We're going to add the solidify modifier, just like that. You see how it got thicker? You want to quarter that. So we want it to be 0.25, just like that. So you select it, edit mode, and this is the cool part. I love doing this with a passion. So we're going to click off that for a minute, Shift R, whoops, not that one, Control R, This gives us this yellow line, and we can use the mouse wheel to scroll up however many we want. We're just going to use 3 for now. So 1 in the center and 2 on the side. Do that on both ends. Highlight only the corners. 1, 2, 3, 4. Control Shift B. This opens up the bevel tool. This is how I used to make stop signs. And now that does not look anything like a rounded sign. But we want to use the mouse wheel to add. Just like that. So we want to call this our front. And we want to make sure we patch this up in the UV edit as soon as possible. Since only one side of this sign is being used, we're going to keep our front huge, and we're going to make our back and our poles all in the same spot. Control C, Control V, and we'll call this rear. Move the rear back so that it connects with the sign. Perfect. Move around, see if it's doing anything weird, which it's not. Select our front and line it back. Now when I like to combine my meshes, I like to keep using the 50-50 rule. So put it about halfway in. So if there is any issues, we find it instantly. It doesn't look like there is. Awesome. So then what we're going to do now is we're going to click on our rear and our cylinders. UV mode. And just shrink it all up in one little ball. The reason we're doing this is these here, so our rear and our cylinders are going to be using the same color, therefore it's not really wanted to have them all spread out like this. So now that this is all done, UV editing, hit the A key. Whoops, something's gone wrong. Here we are. There we are. Highlight it all. UV, export UV layout. So we're going to call this UV. Moving on to Microsoft Paint. This is paint.net. So we're going to open a new one. We're going to open our UV. We can close that and that. So we're going to grab our rounded rectangle tool. We're going to have it white. Just like that. What we're going to do is we're going to grab our rectangle tool. And we're going to change this black color to a really dark gray. So we need a little brighter than that. Just like that. And then if we look at our sign, bring it up again. You can see that it's on the lower third and lower. So you just want to hook this up here. Do that. Shrink this down to at least lower thirds. And then we can just paint that. We're going to add our logo now. So we're going to go into my spare folder, which will be off screen for, privacy reasons. We are going to Control C our logo, and then Control V it. Shrink it down until it looks decent. Hit F8 to find our color palette, and then dye it the correct colors. Grab our text. We have Optimus Sire. But the font that Queensland Rail uses is called Optima Bold, which really does not want to install. We're just going to be using Vera Humana 95. Swap it to the grey text and type out your sign. Now we did make a small boo-boo, which we are going to undo immediately. We're going to grab our shapes again, our rectangle. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Only a little bit. We're going to type that all out again. look too close to the top, so we're just going to put a shape over it. Over in my spare folder, I have a very generic scratched metal PNG, which I'm just going to cover the rest of the UV with. Just like that. Save it under a new name and in a TGA format, mainalbedo.tga, and then back into Blender. You want to make sure that all of your meshes contain the same material. So the material we're going to be using is a legacy type, material.m.1 text. That's one texture. It uses a single texture throughout the entire mesh. So we're going to copy that to all of our other meshes. When all of that is done, we can go into our UV editing, highlight everything again, open, go into your folder with our albedo, and make sure that everything works properly. Sometimes Blender will give you these bullshit reasons why your mesh isn't working. Sometimes you just got to be extra stubborn. Now, as you can see, our mesh has shown up backwards, but that's okay, we can fix that. In our UV edit, all we have to do is make sure that the selected UV is in its proper place, UV mirror on the x-axis, and our sign is done. We made a small boo-boo in our image. The heritage rolling stock maintenance text is too low. So we're just going to shift it up. Just like that. Remember to fill the gap with all this with white or whatever color you chose so it doesn't show up on Blender. And save it. In your UV texture, you can select image, replace, and then select the same image you used. So now it looks like an actual sign. We're now going to show you how to get it into Blender, into trains. My bad. So when I highlight the lot, in your shading tab, add texture, image texture. You want to connect this yellow dot called color to the yellow dot called base color. You want to select your albedo. Here it is. Blurry as ever. So then go back, File, Export, FBX. You want to call it something very generic, like HTGE for heritage. Make sure that it's a mesh and that the y-axis is forward. We're now going to boot up trains. In the Content Manager, under the My Content tab, Developer, New Content. Should be at the very bottom, called New Asset. Open the config file. Welcome to config.texture, or text document, txt text. We want to, this is where Trains reads all the information we input. So up here is your keyword, that's your unique ID. The first 6 numbers are you, The last 6 numbers are your asset number. So I've currently created 42 assets. How cool is that? We want this to be a scenery type. And we want to call it under the username tab QR heritage sign. Author. That's you. Put in your username that you signed up to trains with. Mine is Death 2018. Trains build. The trains build is the model of trains that you're using. So Trains A New Era is 4.5 and the current update is 4.8. So I'm going to create this for Trains Build 4.5, which is Trains A New Era. Category class. The category class tells Trains where to put your asset. Is it a horn sound? Is it a locomotive? Is it a sign? Is it a track? Is it spline? So because we're only using a sign, we're just going to put it in BR. So now we're going to work on our mesh table. The mesh table is one of the most complex things I've ever done in my life, because it has an opinion every single time. So we want to do a bracket, default, double space bracket, and under that, whoa, hello, you want to put mesh. You want to put in brackets what you called your 3D folder file. So htge dot trains mesh. Under that, auto create 1. That means Trains will automatically create a thing for it. I don't know the proper word for it. So close that off. Thumbnails. Same rule as the mesh table. Bracket, default, double space, opening bracket, image. So this is what image you're using. So you need to type it the exact way a computer would see it. So thumbnail dot JPEG. Width. The width is how wide your thumbnail will be. So you see down the bottom corner this PB15 that I took, and it's so awesome, and yeah, that is 240 pixels wide, 180 pixels deep. Double bracket, close it. Whoops, wrong bracket. And finally, your QID table. This is basically useless for us, so we don't do anything for it. So then we right click our asset, open, show in Explorer, and you should see this. So this is everything we just did. So what we need to do now is we need to drag everything we've done and put it into the document. So we drag in our mesh, we drag in our albedo, and we drag in a thumbnail. Now I forgot the thumbnail was a PNG, so you have to change that in the config. Close, right click, submit. And just like that, our asset is modified. So we need to view any errors and warnings. And fix them appropriately. So you need to make sure they're all in line. And then try again. So if it comes up as faulty, you need to find out why. So view errors and warnings, thumbnail.png within the container type of default. If you get that, I have attached below a copy of a config. So you just need to copy the text from here and copy it over here. And just change the name. Delete the trackside because we want this to be a building. HTGE. So this is a problem we have found on normal meshes. Our mesh is more than 500 polygons. So if we go into Blender and have a look down the bottom on our tris, 568. The way we can combat that is very simple. So we go into our rear and then use the decimate tool. And you'll see as I slide this over here, our tris will go down. So you want to keep going until we're below 500. File, export, FBX. You can save it exactly how you saved it last time. Delete that and copy in your new one. You can always open it up in 3D Viewer and have a look. Make sure it looks good. And then submit. So by now, if we can find it, there it is, it'll still tell us it's faulty. Now this is Trains lying, because if we open it up, it disappeared, which means it's no longer faulty. So go into Trains, start your session. I've got a test route specifically for things like this. Edit route. Wait for it to load. And there you go. On the other side of this mesh, there is a Heritage rolling stock maintenance joint right next to your station.